skills and attitudes that will be gained in this particular course to carry out inspections, supervise, and give appropriate advice on proposed buildings under construction, and also the existing buildings. So we have about 6 module outcomes. Number one is to identify the tools that are used in building construction, interpret the legal and procedural requirements in the building industry, supervise site preparation, oversee setting out of buildings and excavation, and also supervise building construction, renovation, repair, and also demolition. Lastly, we also expect you to know how to carry out inspection of buildings for certification purposes. And for this particular day, we are going to look at the building tools, the types of buildings, and the parties that are involved in the building industry. This will be actually our introductory for this particular day. But before we move on, I would like us to define a few terms. There are many terms used in the building industry, but we are not going to define all of them. So we'll define a few of them so that we are in line for this particular lesson. So the first one is a building. So you ask yourself, what is a building? For the purpose of this particular unit, that is building construction, a building is any structure, either movable or fixed or whatever kind, or any part thereof, and includes drainage works and also excavation. Then another very important thing is also to define a public building, and this is a building that is intended to be used either ordinarily or occasionally as a church, chapel, or other place of public worship, or as a hospital, public institution, college, school, not merely a private dwelling house, or used theater, public hall, public concert room, or public place of assembly for persons admitted thereto by tickets, or otherwise used or intended to be used either ordinarily or occasionally for a public meeting. So as you can see from this definition of public building, we mean that building that is actually used by the public. It is that building which is not private. It's public, as the name suggests. So when we talk about a domestic building, it is any building which is neither a public building nor a warehouse. So those are some of the few terms. There are other terms like shanties, commercial buildings, temporary buildings, semi-permanent buildings, permanent buildings. So those are some of the things that I expect you to look at further as you look at the definitions. So let us look at the parties that are involved in the building industry. Building industry has a number of people who are involved, and the first one, we have the client, that is the building owner, the initiator of this particular project. We also have an architect, a structural engineer, quantity surveyor, clerks of work, a site agent, building contractor, sub-building contractor, foreman, departmental representative, and we also have other engineers. So those are some of the few people, or what we refer to as a building team, or those people who are involved in the construction industry. So let us begin by looking at the client. The client, as we said, is the owner of this building, and is the one who commissions the starting of the building, and his main responsibility is actually to finance the proposed building. And when we talk of finance, in terms of provision of the land and also provision of the capital that is used to carry out this construction work, it does not need to have the knowledge for the building construction, and approaches the architect to design for him the proposed building. A client is actually a very important party in the building industry, and he is the initiator, is the one who initiates the building process. So let us look at the architect. The architect is the person who is engaged by the building owner as his agent to design, advise, and ensure the project is kept within the cost and in compliance with the design. So the main role of the architect is to actually design and also advise the project owner and make sure that the building is within the cost. What are the responsibilities of this architect? Number one is to design the preliminary sketch drawing, then sketch the drawings are submitted to the client for approval. After the client's approval, the architect prepares the drawing works, which consists a site plan, a drawing, and a drawing to a suitable scale, for example 1 to 100, and they will include plans, sections, and elevations, and detailed drawings. So the first responsibility is actually to design that building. He begins by coming up with a sketch, and after the owner or the client approves, he now comes up with the final design, which includes the things like site plan, things like sections, elevations, and also the fittings in terms of the windows and the doors. So these are some of the things that you are going to learn further when you study technical and building drawing. The second responsibility of this architect is the submission of the working drawings to the authority. And when we talk about the authority, we mean either the county governments, the municipals, and so on. So it's the work of the architect to present this or to submit these drawings for approval by the authorities. He also prepares the specifications. Those are detailed written documents describing construction of the building, including quality and quantity of the materials required. He also supervises the construction from the start to finish, and he also organizes organization of tendering. So these are some of the responsibilities of the architect. Another very important person is also the quantity surveyor, and this is the architect's technical accountant. What are the responsibilities of the quantity surveyor? And as you will learn later in quantity survey, we have two kinds of quantity surveyors depending on their roles. But for building, we are going to look at a generalized roles or responsibilities of the quantity surveyor. Number one is to advise the architect on the cost of the proposed building to enable him or her to carry on with this design work. So this is the person who comes up with the cost, and he also, the other responsibility is also preparation of the bill of quantities, and this contains all the quantities of materials required. For example, concrete, stones, roofing materials, number of windows, doors. The bill of quantities enables the builder to come up with the cost of the building. Another responsibility of the architect is of the quantity survey is also to make sure that he advises the architect so that they can come up with the proper specification for the buildings. Then we also have a structural engineer, and this is a specialist in the buildings structural design. When we talk about the structural design, it is basically the skeleton of the building, and this person has one major responsibility is to ensure the stability of the building by designing structural members of the buildings, for example foundations, columns, beams, and floors. And that is why you are going to also do some a subject by the name mechanics of structure. This is now where this structural engineer comes in to make sure that the building is stable. As you already know, or you have come across, a building has some certain loads in terms of the wall, in terms of the roofs, and so on. So the structural engineer makes sure that the building is structured in such a way that the stability is actually attained. Another very important person in the construction in the industry is the foreman or the agent, and is the contractor's on-site representative responsible for the day-to-day running of the construction. And this is actually a very important person because he is the one who makes sure that the daily activities of the buildings are carried out according to the specifications. Now let us look at the submissions of plans for approval. So there are some certain requirements that are supposed to be met before a plan is submitted for approval. A person who intends to erect a building or materially change the use of the building or part of a building shall furnish the local authority, that is the county government, with the particulars of what he intends to do. These particulars are written in ink and signed by the developer or his authorized agent. It is signed by the agent, the person